Hello and welcome to Simplified. My name is Gurjot and this is Cool Stuff Episode 4. We have with us Christoph today. Christoph, thank you so much for joining me. Could you tell me about yourself? Who is Christoph?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. So Christoph is now, 33 years old? Christoph is a committed European, living in Switzerland for 7 years and happily living in Switzerland. But the reason why we have this interview is, I guess, also the entrepreneurial Christoph, yes. The one that set up or co-founded Impact Hub Zurich, which is a incubator, community center, co-working space all around startups with a certain value set. And we started with that 7 years ago. That was basically when I came to Switzerland, originally from Germany. In my first week I met my co-founders at the University of St. Gallen, and we started to directly talk, have a beer the next day when we talked first time. I had a beer, talked over again, and a couple of weeks later we decided to start Impact Hub in Zurich, at that time in the Viaduct Arches. That's the first location, and now 7 years later it has developed into multiple locations and has grown quite a lot.
How did you did it start off as an incubator first, or was it a co-working space that developed?
Well, the one word that describes Impact Hub is community. So the first thing you do, you build community. You don't even start with a space. You don't start with a program like an incubation program or activities. You start really with building community through events. So we had events at a nearby cafe. The Spheres was kind of our home base for some time.
Okay.
Because we knew the founder. And there we had first events on how the social entrepreneurship landscape in Switzerland could be looking like. So basically the idea of social entrepreneurship being entrepreneurship as a means to tackle issues and challenges for humanity. So we still orient ourselves towards the sustainable development goals. It's just that we've grown out of a particular niche of social entrepreneurship towards a larger, let's say, entrepreneurship per se, but with a value set. And you start with community building by finding people who care about that, either entrepreneurs themselves who are building companies in that, or even NGOs. It could be non-profit, for-profit, that doesn't really matter, as long as it's entrepreneurial, sustainable, it can grow and develop and impact others. And after that basically the community starts scratching on the doors of a space that doesn't yet exist, because somehow you want to have a physical location where you can meet constantly and always, and that you can build in a way you want to have it within a collaborative space design process. And that's when we started the Viaduct. Then you could say Impact Hub became both a community and a co-working offering. And when we opened January 2011, we had the announcement of the first fellowship, which was a 1-year incubation program, or still is a 1-year incubation program, where entrepreneurs are supported for 1 year from idea stage into building prototype, minimal viable product, a sustainable company or sustainable organization. It's a 1-year process, and we started that in Zurich and then also replicated this program across the world. So you could say at the moment we opened the doors, it was already community, co-working and event space, incubation programming. And now it's even further than that. More areas of activities have been started since then.
And you said you've moved around the world. Where else do you have offices now?
Well, so Impact Hub, first of all, it started in London, in Islington, in 2005. And local teams, local entrepreneurs replicated the model. So they basically just copied it, but in probably 95% within consent of the people who've done it in the first place. Like us, we received a letter from one of the earlier founders. And now it has 90 Impact Hubs around the world, 90. So it's really big. We have 15,000 members across the globe. Here we have 820 members, which is by memberships the largest hub in the world, Impact Hub Zurich. So it's also we're trying to push the network also a little bit in terms of ambition and others from Zurich, but also from other strong locations. what I mentioned with this thing that started here and then went to other hubs is the fellowship program. And when we started Hub, we were appealed on one hand by that there's other hubs already existing, so we were number 15 or so.
Okay.
So we knew there are like-minded entrepreneurs who kind of walk the same path than we are walking in their cities, in Sao Paulo, in Amsterdam, in London, in Vienna. But we also wanted to make our personal fingerprint on this network. So we said, look, we want to move this network beyond community and space. We want to also have programs. We want to attract interesting entrepreneurs, because just by community and space, you might not attract the entrepreneurs who have every possibility. Like, I mean, in Zurich, you have so many opportunities to go to community events, you have different space opportunities. So that's not maybe what will attract some of the entrepreneurs. So we said we want a program. We created this fellowship program. The very first one was WWF at that time. So we were looking for entrepreneurial ideas around environmental sustainability. Very broad at that time. Now the fellowships later were much more specific.
So it was sponsored by the WWF?
Yeah, it's basically what we say, it's either, it moved from sponsorship to actually also service to a company or so it's now, it's NGOs having been partner, foundations. We did it with Mercator Foundation on youth development, so entrepreneurial ideas around youth development. There were large corporates as partners, like Swisscom in ICT for Good, so any technology reason that's kind of good for humanity. There were even the state, so the Federal Institute, the Federal Office of Energy did a fellowship on renewable energies and energy efficiency with us, 3 fellowships in a row. And this program was then replicated by other hubs in the network. So because we already had an existing global network with, at that time, 20 hubs or so, it was much easier to replicate a program that was here in other hubs. And with the help of Avina Foundation, who also had the idea, hey, this is nice to have it in Zurich. At that time, there weren't many offerings for social entrepreneurs particular, and for entrepreneurs was still much less than today. It was 7 years ago, 6 years ago. But in other locations, there might not be that many offerings, up to none. There is no offering. You don't even find mentors or so in some other cities, like, I don't know, in Zagreb. I just spoke to the founder of Impact Hub Zagreb. And so Avina Foundation allowed us to, so they paid for the replication of this program over 3 to 4 years. And now it's in 15 impact hubs around the world. It has been running. So we have had like 40 fellows or so, entrepreneurs in specific environmental or social topics. And I think this is important. This is also where Impact Hub Zurich comes from. It comes from this very strong focus on social entrepreneurship and environmental innovation. When we realized 3 years ago that we need to be much stronger in technology, because every entrepreneur nowadays needs technology. A lot of tech entrepreneurs are actually changing the world, and not only the non-tech people are doing good stuff, also the techies are doing good stuff. We try to position ourselves more and more in the tech space, and what helped massively, or what helped us succeed in this, is our merger with Colab, which was the leading tech or hacker space at that time.
Okay.
So Colab and Impact Hub Zurich, a social entrepreneurship community and a techie community, merged, and the result is where we are sitting here, for instance. So this large space now on three levels in here was basically done through this merger. And now it's really one. After 3 years later, there's no them and us anymore. It has really merged nicely. So now you have in here creatives, cultural entrepreneurs, tech entrepreneurs, freelancers. You have still social entrepreneurs who are hardcore working on poverty reduction. And all this, we basically bundle together under the umbrella of the Co-Manifesto. So the Co-Manifesto is our backbone of what Impact Hub stands for today. And when I said community was the initial word, it may be now collaboration.
Okay.
It's still, we call it Co-Manifesto instead of Manifesto, because the co is the important thing. It's a community, it's a collaboration, it's a co-working, it's a cooperation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of in there. It's even the competition, which is good for entrepreneurship. Sometimes you cooperate, sometimes you collaborate, sometimes you compete. I was just digging in my bag for the Co-Manifesto, so you have it here. It basically describes how we try to build a collaborative, radically collaborative world, or at least a very small subsector of the world within our community here. And we have principles behind it, principles like you start with why, or no hidden agenda, which is interesting one if you sit in a negotiation process and you say, hey, our principle is no hidden agenda.
Yeah.
So I'm revealing everything there is.
Yeah. And whatever I have is on the table now.
Exactly.
There's nothing behind this.
And on the bottom layer, you still see the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 goals from the United Nations, which gives us a little bit of an orientation of what are we excited about, what kind of member startups we would like people to work in. Because that's something, particularly in the startup environment, that we would like to see more is, let's talk less about how many financing rounds a startup gets, or if a startup has an exit or not, which are moments of celebration for stuff, fine. But if you receive financing, normally you give away equity. So actually what you do is you sell parts of your company, for that you receive money, and within that moment you agree that you will sell it.
Yeah.
You will exit. Now, nowadays the startup world talks a lot about this. You see, or in TechCrunch and all others, you see a lot of communication and celebration on this startup received that financing. We miss a little bit the talk about what the startups are actually solving, what the startups are actually doing.
What's their impact?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I have a meeting today with someone, I will not say who, and when he called me, he was telling me, yeah, and we have an investor, a famous actor from the US, and and I didn't even know what they're doing. And I asked, and I didn't understand it verbally. So I asked again, and it took me 5 minutes to really understand what they are doing. Yeah. But I'd already known who are their investors, how many financing rounds, and all this bullshit that, it's just, it has become a little bit as if finance and access to finance and exits were the reason why we do this stuff. While I think the reason why we do this stuff is the possibility to change something in the world, and even if it's in a small area of the world, in a particular area, topic-wise or geographically, I think that's what drives us entrepreneurs. And yeah, there are also other entrepreneurs who are driven by other motivations, like getting rich or so. But honestly, if you want to get rich, just go to an investment bank or so. Yeah. It's much less risky. Yeah.
So you mentioned how you merged with Collab, so like a tech community merged with the social entrepreneurship community. Do you notice that these two things are not quite distinct anymore? Because if you are a social entrepreneur, you do need to use technology at some point. Even if you're trying to build a new art gallery, you will need to have an online portfolio, and you need a web designer for it.
I think I totally agree, and the point here is where I did a PhD in St. Gallen, so in a PhD process you have to be very specific on definitions, on this is an impact investor, this is another investor, this is a social, this is another entrepreneur. As an impact hub, you don't need to be that specific. And people here don't care if you call them social entrepreneurs, tech entrepreneur, whatsoever. It's, I'm building this because I want to, take Wild Bean on partner. It's a wild bee startup. They're building little beehives, selling them to customers. With that, the customers grow the bees in the beehives. Yeah. They get them back. They go to farmers and offering it a pollination service. That's quite a complex idea, but it's brilliant. It's basically outsourcing the procurement process of your bees that you need as a pollination service. Yeah. They are scaling to other countries now, so they have a multi-million financing, and they're having a for-profit company with it. But they were fellows in an area of biodiversity, so we were looking for startups that help on biodiversity against the dying of bees and stuff. You can call them social entrepreneurs, you can call them entrepreneurs, you can call them, tech entrepreneurs maybe less so, they have less of a technology, but they will. They will of course have much more. They will have drones to see if the bees are working on the fields, and that stuff will happen. So I totally agree that this all blends, and I would almost leave it to the individual person to say how best to describe yourself. I describe myself as an entrepreneur, but others would say I'm a social entrepreneur. Yeah. My co-founders from Collab side, they're also entrepreneurs, but maybe others would say they are techies. Yeah. They built already a tech company. They built a Collab which was for techies and hackers, but still they're just entrepreneurs, and I think that's the common denominator.
What you said before, it just doesn't matter what you call yourself. What matters is the impact you have. That's how it goes. So you also mentioned.
Well, that's why we call it Impact Hub, right?
Yeah.
It's in our brand. It's basically
Yeah.
we're not just a hub for anyone to meet and connect. It's hopefully we meet and connect in order to have a certain impact. And with impact, we implicitly mean a positive impact, something that advances us as humanity and not something that fucks up the planet even more, or the way we deal with employees, or the way we organize ourselves in companies, or legal ownership. All this stuff, there's a lot that needs to be changed, and I think our generation is opening the eyes to that.
What you just said, so you're looking for people that will have an impact in a way. So do you have a bit of a vetting process when people come and...
Well, we used to in the first couple of years, we had interviews with every member before they could join the community. The interview, I mean, it was a coffee talk.
Yeah.
But you easily understand is a person attracted because there's a cheap workspace, or if this person wants community and wants other people, wants to know who else. I mean, it's just by the question that people ask, like, where's my desk? It's a different question than who else is in the community who works on, I don't know, biodiversity or whatever. So within those interviews, we could already build the critical mass of a community that then selects itself somehow. I mean, now with 820 members, you don't need to do that, because the way we communicate, the way that the existing community members by word of mouth tell others, bring their friends, it somehow selects itself, and you can, let's say, you don't have to steer it on the individual person anymore. You can more steer it on an institutional level, on an organizational level, by sending out certain messages, by building programs in a certain way. For instance, Kickstart Accelerator is a pure conventional startup acceleration process, which looks for any startup in those verticals that we have, fintech or food or others, and we have the mandate to run Kickstart Accelerator. But we brought in the tagline of saying, investing in solutions that work for problems that matter. Right? I mean, we could have had a tagline of saying, investing in the most profitable startups on the planet, which other accelerators might do, but we don't. So it's that kind of elements that help us position ourselves alongside the co-manifesto.
Now, you've been working on this for about 7 years now, you said. How do you think your responsibilities have changed from when you first started to now, 7 years, when you've already established yourself now?
I think, first of all, what hasn't changed is that I'm still involved on finance and sales related activities. I've been, for my first day, I was the one trying to find the money to build up Impact Hub. And still today, if it's about large partnerships or so, I'm involved in the sales process or so. I mean, partnerships meaning service level agreements with organizations, companies. What has changed is, I think, my operational involvement. I mean, I remember I built our ops tool on an Excel spreadsheet, basically. So we didn't have a tech tool, so I built it in Excel of how we sent invoices at what time to which members, up to a point where we still had 250, 300 members. So it became very complex, and just with if clauses in Excel, so it was very vulnerable tool. Yeah. But at that time I was heavily involved in operations and admin and these processes. There I'm far away now, so I'm even less and less managerial in a way here, because particularly the circle where I'm involved in, so the circle meaning kind of the department, the people who work on a specific area within the hub of our employees. So there's roughly 45 employees in the whole hub family, let's say, some in the spin-offs of hub or in the kind of subsidiary companies, and some in the main mothership Impact Hub Zurich. And in my circle, that cares for innovation services and for startup programming, as opposed to community and space. This is a different circle. There we have, in my view, very senior people, very self-managed people there who know more than I do about how a corporate partnership should work. Yeah. Or Hannah, who knows more than I do about how do you do leadership trainings in large corporates so that they start treating their employees as human beings and not like human resources. That kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed a trend now. Human resources departments have started calling themselves people's departments now.
Really? You see that trend? That's awesome. That's so cool. That's good to hear, because even like this is also like 6 years ago. So in my PhD for one of our papers, we had this point of does HR matter or not, and I said, can we please call it people, or people management maybe, but not human resource management.
Because that kind of human resource kind of sounds like equating an employee to a block of coal or something. Because it's a resource.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there we have a history of extracting things from. I mean, with resources we have a bad track record as well as humanity. So either we would start our view on resources in a more circular and positive way, or we first, and I think that's a better way to go, is we don't call humans human resources. We call them people. We call them human beings. And it's not only about labeling people like this. It's about what behavior do you then, what routines do you build. Mm-hmm. For us, if we do meetings, we do check-ins, and a personal check-in, meaning how are you? Have you had a party yesterday and couldn't sleep or couldn't sleep for a worrying cause or so? Then I know you're tired today. Then I know that your comments might be different than if you are cheerful than others. So I perceive you as a human being here in the organization, and not you are a robot that comes to work because we pay you and you do your task. In most, if not all, large companies that I've seen, you're basically within a box of an organigram, which is, you could put it on an org chart, you could give it to a roboter. And I mean, as we know the current discourse, this will probably happen to many. Yeah. It will be a roboter in some, and then we can call them resources. I don't care until they also become get a soul or so. But this is now 15, not just 5 years ahead, huh? Yeah. Or maybe, yeah.
That's great. Do you think, because Impact Hub, like you said, is a community, it's a co-working space. People get together, if I understand correctly, they advertise their skills. Well, hi, I'm a web developer. If someone is trying to build something and needs a website, I can help you with it. They connect with each other, and that's how just things work, project to project. Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's we still use a term that was created in the very first Impact Hub in Islington in London, was engineered serendipity. Okay. So we create the conditions for serendipities, for moments by chance. There can be very light touch elements to it, like having a co-working space where you don't have fixed offices is already in creating conditions. It's already in engineering for people to meet. Could go one step further. You create lunches or joint breakfasts or weekender drinks, after work drinks, or so, where people meet again. That's the next layer. Then you could facilitate these events a little bit, whereby you say you make a brief intro round. Yeah. Every Friday at the Startup Circle, 5:30 here in the afternoon, we have a round where people say the successes and failures of the week. They share it. But it's voluntary, you can come there, that's the next layer. And then one level further is you create a certain program where you do hands-on matchmaking, like Summerpreneurship matches startups with students who are looking for an internship over summer in startups, and we help the students over the summer every Friday to reflect on their experience. So it's a mix of an academy or summer school and an internship. Mm-hmm. So you see, you have a whole range of how do you make it possible that a freelancer can offer his or her services, or a startup can receive the people management skills that his or her startup needs, towards a large company comes to us and wants to build a certain product, but normally they would, I don't know, try to do it internally or get a traditional consulting firm or whatever. And here they go into a community where they receive, first of all, access to entrepreneurs, who are used to build stuff, who are not used to consult you. So it's a different process. So even companies come to us for product development, and we call it Factory. So factory.impacthub.ch is a offering for large organizations mostly. We also do it for startups, but it's kind of a offering for large companies and organizations whereby we build products or solutions together with the community. So we then look for, I need this crazy data scientist from here, and I need this human rights lawyer from here, and I need the entrepreneur in the mobility startup from there. And I ask them, can you please come in that week? Because in this week we want to build a product in the mobility, data and humanity field for company XYZ, for Swisscom or whoever. Yeah. So that's what we do, and this is the whole range of what you were referring to, of how do you make sure that connections happen.
Engineered serendipity.
Engineered serendipity. Sometimes more engineered, sometimes more serendipitous.
Do you think this is the future now? no more 9 to 5 corporate jobs. You just, I don't know, in another decade from now, co-working spaces will be the norm because they maybe are more successful.
It will be much more diverse than today. I think today I'm not sure if I would go as far as co-working spaces will be the norm and only co-working spaces, and then left or right are maybe a little bit office here or lab there. There's jobs, there's stages within a company or so where a pure co-working space I don't think is the right tool, the right mechanism. But I think right now we are the strange ones. I mean, organizations, people, policymakers come here to look at us like in a zoo sometimes. They wonder how are these innovative people working? But they're also now starting to ask us, hey, can you build this for us? Can you build this within our company walls? Can you build it at Unterberg Sellnau, a large event hall from the utility company EWZ here on the other side of the main station? We are now creating an innovation power plant, which is basically filling it for corporate innovation and for innovation for large organizations on a day-to-day basis, not just on events.
Okay.
And they are putting resources behind it for us to build it.
Yeah.
So I think this is, the future is much more diverse in how these careers, work conditions, work styles will be like. Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, I briefly mentioned the point with the robots. I don't know many of us yet already understand what that really means with algorithms taking over white-collar jobs.
Yes.
Yeah, I think on the kind of blue-collar economy, the production, reproduction processes, we see it already. We are used to outsourcing to IT and so on and so forth. In white-collar jobs, that algorithms take over banking jobs, that already happens. Yeah. Lawyer jobs, that's happening so I think, very, very early stage still, but we'll see it almost everywhere. And I don't know how a office of the future will then look like. Mm-hmm. But maybe more like a co-working space than like individual large office headquarters, because you don't need them anymore. You have basically server racks, or you have massive server parks from the large IT companies, and everyone else is using the cloud where the algorithm runs of Amazon Web Services and others.
You talked about engineered serendipity. Do you also, because I've read a couple of news articles or studies about how sometimes things can get over-engineered because you have no cubicles, you have no walls, and that's not always the most conducive environment to work in. So have you noticed that here?
Well, I think the term of engineered serendipity already says we don't want to engineer because it has these serendipitous moments in there. It's a half serious statement basically, because we actually want to control less, engineer less, and we want to break down walls. I mean, as it says on the Manifesto, it's all around collaboration. Mm-hmm. That means breaking down walls between sectors, let's say for-profit and non-profit sector, between industry, let's say IT, energy, industry, mobility, whatever. It's within domains within the professional society, the professional area of society, meaning freelance, corporate employee, entrepreneur, breaking down all those barriers. And physically that means, for instance, breaking down walls. Physically that might mean creating tables that are more an invitation to connect than they are an invitation to separate yourself from others. Like you would go to Viaduct, the tables are leaflet, they are round. They are like oval, not like a round table, but a long and round, like a leaf, where it's not clear where do you actually exactly sit, because there could be 5 people sitting on one leaflet or 1 person. So there's a collaborative space design element in it. And
that's what I was talking about. Sometimes that's not the most conducive environment to work in. Sometimes you just need to isolate yourself.
Exactly, and that's my second point is now here at the space we created almost different floors, whereby you have a silent co-working area on the top.
Okay.
So this is like a library. You can work there in total silence if you go all the way to the top. Then underneath there's a maker spaces also. You will see it's much less noisy than here on the first floor, but it's already you could be on the phone and it's still okay. Here it's basically already noisy on the first level, although we have phone booths and for instance, and down in the cafe it's totally lively.
Yeah.
So you have everything from absolutely lively, like in a bar, to library.
Yeah.
And you find every environment in here. If we had more space, I think we would start to create offices as well. Because that works well in other hubs. I think the combination of co-working and office.
Mm-hmm.
What we don't want to be is an office provider. Like, we don't want to be seen as an office provider. You can, if you want to have an office, go somewhere else. Like if you want to just look for an office. But if you look for the community connection, but still for your team you need an office, for your work, then you want something nearby. You know, and how amazing would it be if you have an office, maybe with glass walls, so people can still see that there's people in, but you can a little bit hide away if you have serious stuff to talk that you don't want to talk in an open space on a day-by-day basis. For this, we have the meeting room we are sitting in here right now for the co-workers.
Yeah.
So I agree, co-working is not, sometimes I have to go away from co-working a little bit if I need to get certain things done.
Yeah, that's all fantastic. So I'm going to ask you a couple of things about yourself. So tell me about yourself. What are your passions? How do you spend your free time?
My partner, she's my passion. My sports.
What do you play?
So I've been playing volleyball for 25 years now already, a long time. So both indoor and beach volleyball in the summer. But also more and more outdoor sports, so I surf. So my partner and I, every possible vacation we go surfing. Mountain biking, like downhill. So that's kind of my meditation is outdoor sports and particularly surfing. And the rest is probably building things, creating. It's what I'm addicted to. Building new stuff, and I mean, whenever you come with something new that we can create and that can be established, and not just in the first 3 months and then I go to the next thing.
Yeah.
I also have the persistence to build things and then keep it going for 3 years or so until it actually runs by itself, and then I want to move on a little bit. Mm-hmm. And that's what Impact Hub almost as a platform has allowed me to do in the last 7 years.
What's your day-to-day like? Is being a co-founder at the Impact Hub a 7 days a week job, or do you get your weekends off and you don't think about it at all?
It depends. I mean, right now I have my weekends mostly off. Right now we track time now, which is very healthy. Mm-hmm. And it's an obligation by the Swiss law, which is not so good for startups sometimes. But I'm now at sometimes something between 50 to 60 hours a week. Of course, that is more than a contract, and it's not a 9-to-5 job, and I don't expect it to be because of other benefits in entrepreneurship. But it's also not crazy as it sometimes can be. Like last year, I had weeks of 70 to 80 hours because we built Kickstart Accelerator in a very short amount of time, and really in record time we had to create it. So right now I think it's more sustainable than it has been, but it comes in phases. I mean, ask me again in 2 months with the large project we have in Zellnau, in Unterberg Zellnau, maybe I will say it's Saturdays is also a work day. But right now it feels I have mostly weekends off,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Christoph, for joining me today. This was really nice talking to you, and maybe we'll speak to you in another couple of months, see where you've gotten from now.
Certainly, you know where to find me.
Thank you for listening. If you liked it, we'd really appreciate it if you shared it and gave us your feedback. We publish a new episode every week. For more details, visit our website simplifyd.xyz.